Whether you're here because you like LEGO or just need a YouTube video to watch while you eat, welcome. Today, I'm building a modular compatible LEGO hospital. Let's get started. First order of business after setting down the base plates was to build the ambulance bay. This covered area will have a sliding glass door that leads directly into the emergency room. Right now, I'm creating a rough layout. This bay will be open to the outside, so I only need to build one full wall, as the other side will only need support beams. After getting the general shape, I removed the supports in order to add details to the floor. After placing down some 2x4 tiles, I decided to add a red and yellow warning pattern to signify the entrance and exit. I continued this pattern with 1x2 grill tiles all along the hospital wall, just to add some extra detail. I was originally going to have the entire bay use tiles, but I didn't have enough. Instead, I decided to add tiles where the ambulance would pull in and plates everywhere else, leading to a surprisingly satisfying pattern. The red and yellow worked so well together in the ambulance bay, I decided to have that be the theme of the entire medical center, breaking away from only using white and red like in so many LEGO City hospitals. Following the completion of the ambulance bay, it was time for the first floor of the main building. I wanted this to be a corner building, with the corner itself being rounded off. It was then that I began building the trans blue and white pillar that will continue all the way to the top of the hospital. After placing the windows, I added some depth to the building by installing these sections that jut out and then slope back into the wall, a nice simple way to make sure the entire building doesn't look flat. Adding some 2x4 tiles and 2x2 jumper plates for the sidewalk really begins to finish off the first wall. After adding the yellow and red pattern to the top of the wall, I deviated back to the ambulance bay in order to complete the roof. I first added a layer of white plates before the second layer of tiles, making sure to add just enough studs to keep the roof on while still making it removable. I was originally just going to place down two 16x16 plates, but that was far too boring. Instead, I used inspiration from LEGO set 7208, one of my favorite sets as a kid, to add some skylights to the roof. These skylights are placed sideways and not secured down in any way, but they do fit perfectly into their slots, so unless it is turned upside down, they will remain in place. Returning to the main building, I originally went with normal doors for the main entrance. I quickly switched them out for a sliding glass door. Reason being, I'd like you to give me one example of a hospital not equipped with an automatic door of some kind or another. Following the door replacement, it was a matter of lather, rinse, repeat for the second wall. As for the rounded corner, I wanted some kind of awning on the outside of the building, and although I didn't capture the process on camera, the result looks amazing. A quick break from the action to show you the awning that I'm constructing for the hospital. I wanted this to have a curved look like many modern buildings do. I have curved slopes on both sides. All of these sides are attached by these 1x4 snot bricks. Once I've put on all the plates to hide the snot bricks, I think it looks really good. Once the awning was put into place, I finished up the second wall. Immediately afterwards, I had to disassemble the red part of the walls and the awning itself. The reason was to build the awning into the wall, making sure it wouldn't fall over. After the completion of this step, I needed to remove the corner to put down some tiles in preparation for the interior floor. Now that all the walls were up, it was time to finish the sidewalk. I had to disassemble and reassemble the sidewalk multiple times in order for it to look symmetrical. I also had to place one of the 2x4 tiles underneath the trans blue pillar in order to give the sidewalk a finished look. The outside facing walls are complete. Time to place down the separation layer, as I like to call it. This is using the same technique as the ambulance bay. It is finally time for the first floor interior. After finishing the Star of Life on the floor of the entrance, I laid out the floor plan for the ER and elevator bay. This is going to be a 1 to 2 person elevator. I thought about making an elevator that could fit a stretcher, but that would take up far too much room, meaning less details for the entire medical center. As for the floor itself, I wanted it to be white originally, but it actually ended up looking very dirty and much too bright. Instead, only the Star of Life would have a white border around it. I then thought of making the floor light gray, but that was still too bright. The final design is dark gray plates for the floor with light gray tiles outlining the rooms. This worked out much better than I expected. In the emergency room, some of the light gray tiles were replaced with 1x4 tiles with 2 studs, allowing for medical equipment to be rearranged for different emergencies. It was finally time to build up the wall facing the ambulance bay. I had to disassemble, then reassemble the ambulance bay multiple times until I was finally able to connect the two parts of the hospital securely. Following this success, I began building up the final walls before deviating to the reception area. I wanted the reception desk to be curved, but I didn't want to use the boring 2x2 curved corner bricks. Instead, I used snot bricks to build sideways, allowing me to use curved slopes to make a much more detailed build. Once I made sure all the computers would fit, I removed the unnecessary studs and replaced them with tiles, leading to a very clean finish. And here is the final result. After installing the reception desk, it was time to finish furnishing the first floor. Or so I thought. So I've run into a problem. These pieces that I used to make the sliding glass doors jut out just enough to where you cannot fit a piece in between. So now I'm gonna have to take the bottom one out. I'm going to leave the top one in and hope that is enough in order to keep the sliding glass door in place. This is easier said than done. I had designed both sets of sliding glass doors with that part on the bottom. This resulted in the removal of two walls that I had just spent a long time making sure they would stay in place. It was a frustrating part of the build, especially since I got worried the doors would slide out with just normal tiles at the bottom. Ultimately, I got it done, and I've learned a valuable lesson when building sliding doors with LEGO. It worked. They slide open and close, stay in place on both entrances. Furniture time! After designing the medical equipment for the ER, including the surgical light that I am quite proud of, it was time for the lobby. Some chairs, flowers, and a vending machine finished it off quite nicely. Making sure to add emergency lights and other details, the wall buildup was finished in record time, and the first floor was complete. The first step in constructing the second floor was to build the floor itself. This was a long process of fitting plates together like puzzle pieces in order to create the base. This part of the build isn't very interesting, so we'll skip past it. After the base was done, it was time to install the windows. I decided to grab some windows with stickers from LEGO set 60047, giving the patients a little more privacy from passerby on the streets below. I apologize for the poor framing. I was switching the position of the windows so much I completely forgot I was on camera. Once the windows were in place, I began filling in the gaps between the window frames, as well as building the walls of the first room and the elevator bay. I decided to begin furnishing the second floor before I built up the walls, just in case I wanted to move some windows or walls around to accommodate some large pieces of furniture. One of these first things I built was our intensive care unit bed. I wanted the bed to have a nice rounded base, while still including some gauges for vitals at the base of the bed. And here is the bed for our ICU, or intensive care unit. We have some gauges here for the patient's vitals. And the reason this part is flat is because it's going right up against this wall. It was a good thing I chose to furnish before finishing the walls. I had to change the location of the window in the ICU in order for the window and bed to line up. Next step was the all-important IV pole, which is filled with a clear liquid and placed right next to the bed. Two computers were added at different parts of the room. Both of them show vitals and one holds some medical equipment. Following that, I had the idea to put in one more computer, but this one would be built into the wall. The only thing left to do with the ICU was build up the walls. This is a pretty straightforward process. I began building the second hospital bed off screen, so we will skip ahead a bit. By this point in the build, I was running low on white bricks and had to get creative with what I did for the walls. On one wall, I built in a desk and cabinets, giving the feeling of a doctor's office. A TV for the ICU and a clock for the doctor's office were also installed. It was then I had the idea of a fish tank. This tank is double-sided, meaning people both inside and outside the doctor's office can watch the fish. It was time to finish the cafeteria. I ripped out the original seating and began building the small coffee and snack shop. The first part was the checkout area, which also included a display for some small sweets. On the opposite side, two cabinets were built into the wall, and some 2x2 jumper plates helped display a croissant, a pretzel, and a pie. After adding a coffee machine and a small door to keep the shop closed off, I created a circular table where 3 people can sit and enjoy their meal. After a quick adjustment of the cafeteria, it was time to construct the remainder of the walls. I made sure to install some clips in the wall. These will hold the room's IV pole. I decided to have this IV be filled with water, getting ready for a patient who is severely dehydrated. After the IV pole was installed, the remainder of the second floor was constructed at lightning speed. Mostly because I was finally able to use a color other than white. In the corner of your screen, you can see me bring out blue pieces. These were used to assemble the almost 3-inch tall Star of Life that will be attached to the side of the medical center. And here we have the final brick-built Star of Life. It's relatively structurally sound. If you shake it, it won't fall apart, but I would not suggest touching the tips of the star. And now, it is finally time to connect the two stories. The hospital is almost done. All that's left is the roof. We'll skip past the copy and paste step of building the floor. It was finally time to install the elevator. This was a long process of trial and error. I wanted the winch to be as low profile as possible, which was the easy part. The difficult part was attaching the ropes to the elevator itself. It took me 3 to 4 tries before getting a connection that wouldn't snap off when pulling up the elevator. I'm almost done and I have run into a problem. I've put too many studs in between the floors, so it's too difficult for the different parts to shoot. The floors are a little too hard to separate right now. I've put too many studs in. Now I'm gonna have to replace some of the studs. That way it's easier to take off some of it. One of the most important things I learned during this build was you're rarely going to get something right the first time. This is something every single aspiring LEGO MOC designer needs to know, because when something doesn't go your way, it can be very tempting to scrap the project. As for our build, I went with a cool pattern at the top of the roof, consisting of 2x2 inverted slopes and 1x2 bar bricks. I placed down the inverted slopes first, then added the white backdrop for the Star of Life. After that, I placed the bar bricks down and covered them up with one layer of plates and another layer of tiles and jumper plates. This gave the roof of the hospital some wonderful crown molding. It's hard to see, but I also finished the trans blue tower, making sure to add the letter O at the top. This stands for the One Town Medical Center, which is the name I'm giving to my hospital. One Town has been the name of my imaginary LEGO town since I was very young. Solar panels are added to the roof, yielding extra power for the hospital. I also made sure to add a ladder, that way people can get onto the roof for maintenance. Now for the finishing touches. An HVAC unit was first installed, then a water main, a large fan, lots of antenna, and a satellite dish. Once these are all put into place, it will be time to assemble the full building. And with that, the One Town Medical Center is complete. Be sure to stick around so you can see the full walkthrough of the hospital. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.